Long ago, 5 men set out from their own paths to achieve their own destinies. Now they are brothers, united under one cause. Alone they are strong, together they are unbreakable. They are bonded by metal.
Hey, welcome back to Bonded by Metal. This is yours truly, Nick Weiser, aka Toxic Nick, and I'm joined, of course, by Imperitus for the Immolation album Descent. This is the 12th album from these guys, straight out of Yonkers, New York. I can't believe it's been 12 albums. That's nuts. And
It
of
kind of
course,
is.
tradition speaking, it sounds like an Immolation album. Also, it's the third straight album with the current lineup. And of course, they got Elron Cantor doing art as he's been doing. I think he did the last piece and maybe the one before that. Zach Owen, once again, on production duties. And of course, joining me to talk about this with his thoughts, Imperitus is here. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing good. Considering these guys are somewhat from my neck of the woods in New York.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to see that they're still doing their thing. As I said to you before we started, my introduction to local death metal was Mortician, Morpheus Descends, and these guys.
Mm-hmm.
Can't ask for a better metal upbringing as far as I can tell.
You had it good in New York with the death metal. You really did. And I'd
And we
say
had
that's
our own
not my
sound back in
opinion.
the day, too.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. You had the Tampa sound, but you definitely had the New York DM sound as well. That's, once again, that's not my opinion. That's a fact as well. So I'm going to let you take the lead on this one because you have a bit more history with them. Granted, I've been a big fan for
Oh,
a
yeah. I've
decade,
talked
decade
to
and a half
Ross and
plus. I feel like you should take the lead because you were into them before I was even aware of them existing as bands. So,
yeah,
what are your thoughts on Descent?
well, it's definitely immolation.
Mm-hmm,
It's nice to see that there's still old school death metal, that they're
mm-hmm,
not
mm-hmm.
trying to reinvent the wheel. They're just straight in your face brutality. I mean, I listened to it on my way to work today and at work, and I was like, God damn, these guys have not taken it down a peg at all. It's
Mm-hmm.
still what they've always been. They've been around since, I want to say, early mid 90s.
I think you're right around that time. It was definitely, I'd say, early '90s because that's when Dawn of Possession came out, the first
Yeah.
album.
And their style, while it's still old school, is just seeing more and more refinement.
I would agree on that.
And it's a solid record from them. It's actually, I haven't really listened to their newer output. I honestly didn't even know they were still around.
Wow.
I'm out of the loop on a lot of stuff, dude. We'll have to have a conversation about that sometime. And
No, I'm even more glad I put this album in front of you.
yeah. I mean, I've had friends of mine go, "Hey, dude, you hear this new album from a band that I like?" I'm like, I didn't know they were even working on an album.
Mm-hmm,
So that's
mm-hmm,
where I'm at these days, unfortunately. But
mm-hmm.
yeah, it's solid. I mean, it's just a wall of sound.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
having
yeah.
seen them live a bunch of times,
Mhm.
that's what you get when you see them live. It's just a wall of just bone crushing death metal.
Yeah, no, it's a barrage. It really is. It's like an avalanche crashing down on you. It was for me going to this album, I was thinking, okay, I had a feeling I'm gonna like this album. But for me, the real question was how much. And I've now listened to this album a few times to really soak it in. And I thought, okay, I noticed right away this album is a bit tighter than their previous album, Acts of God, which came out 4 years ago. I know you say you haven't listened to the previous albums of recent years. That album I'd say was good, but my complaint with it is kind of like when you're on Thanksgiving meals and you're having someone say, "Hey, you want some more?" but you're still full.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad album. And here's the thing: it was actually a really well received album. I know they did many support tours for that album. They did a tour for Cal Decapitation directly opening. They won for Cannibal Corpse again. They did quite a few more than they usually do, and they did a very successful headline tour. So it was clear that there was still a really strong reception. So I guess you could say I was in the minority on it. Like I said, I liked it. I just didn't really love it. But this album, I took an immediate liking to, and I was just feeling the fire from this one because I know it's like Ross Dolan's voice. he sounds pissed, like more pissed than he normally does begin. But there's definitely an added ferociousness to his voice. And I was I was like, this is nuts how much like anger is in his voice than usual. And once again, this is the 12th album. And I'm like, this is wild. And I noticed, unlike the last few albums, this one is like, there's still a lot of the heavier parts where it's not all about the speed, but this album's definitely a bit faster in parts compared to the last few albums. It was never really slow, like an obituary type of thing. It was like fast, but not that fast. But now
I
we're
wouldn't
getting to
necessarily
that
say
fast.
obituary slow, but they are
No, I
more of
say it
a
wasn't like it was. It was
no, I'm not saying obituary is slow. I think they're more of a chugging kind of sound more
like
so
a
than slow.
steady beat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like above. It was like a notch or two above that. But
Mhm.
now it's like reminding me of Dawn of Possession in parts with the added chaos of speed. You still have a lot of the signature immolation sounds, the dissonant stuff.
Yep.
If I had to compare this to like cooking chicken, if immolation was chicken, just follow me here. I would say Descent is them trying to, let's just say, put a little red chili pepper instead of maybe doing the black peppercorn. And what I'm trying to say is they kind of like add a few different seasonings this time around. It's nothing that's going to be wildly erratically different, but you can tell there's a few tweaks and like refinery, as you like rightfully mentioned, and it works. And I was surprised how nothing here sounds like it's recycled. Nothing here sounds recycled. Then you have that beat down in the third song, God's Last Breath. I didn't expect
Mhm.
that. A beat down? It was heavy.
Oh
And-
yeah, this album is brutally
Ooh,
heavy. And that's
dude.
also again where, like I said, that old school New York sound comes in
Mhm,
because it's
mhm.
got the brutal fast stuff, and then all of a sudden they switch it up and go to a more mid-tempo or even damn near doom speed, but it
Yeah,
still retains
that's
that bone-crunching sound.
I love that you said Doomspeed because that would actually nail how that sounded. It really does because this sounds really dark. I mean, really
Mhm.
dark, almost like black metal dark at times. Even I would even say this album kind of stands up with a lot of black metal bands in terms of its dark atmosphere. And boy, is it heavy! And I've heard some heavy albums in my time, but this
Oh
one
yeah.
really like stacks the deck. Like the technique on display from the riffs to the drumming, Steve's drumming on this album. Dude, that opening he did on the 7-song host, I was like, whoa, Steve, what are you doing here? I'm loving it. And Rob Vigna's leads on that song are amazing too. And these guys are kind of like unsung heroes, individually speaking, of course. As a band, they're sung pretty well in the death metal like circles, but I'm talking as individuals. There's some really great songwriters and musicians in this band.
Well, when you've
Mhm,
been doing it as long as they have, if you don't pick up certain skills,
mhm,
you're not gonna last that long.
mhm, mhm.
That's just how it is. It's very few bands, and you know this as well as I do, can keep going and just essentially rewriting the same song over and over again.
And that could get tricky, especially once again, you're a death metal band. You're doing this on the 12th album. It gets
Mhm.
tough when you had to constantly come up with ideas without really dramatically changing your sound and still sounding fresh. Nothing about this, as I'm now repeating, sounds recycled here. And there are little like added bits, like little nudges of melody, but not to the point where it's like it loses its balls. It's still dark. It's still moody at times and it's still absolutely badass. And I've noticed something, and there's even some songs, one or two of them, where there's even like slight backing vocals. I'm like, okay, I don't recall that in an Immolation album ever. And if there is one, I don't remember it. I could easily look it up just for conversation's sake on here, but I'm just gonna say I don't remember it. So if there was, I totally forgot about. But did that shock you hearing some of the backing vocals on here?
No, not really,
Uh-huh.
because even though we just said they really haven't changed much of their sound,
Hmm.
Immolation has been one of those bands that likes to experiment a little bit.
Yeah, tweaks.
Tweaks here and there. When I say experiment, I mean they haven't gone full on like changing their sound or adding things that weren't there before. Like I would kind of raise my eyebrow if I heard like something that belongs on a Fin Troll album on a Immolation album.
I would
Don't get
agree
me
with that.
wrong, I love Fin Troll.
Mm,
That's as
good
I
band.
described them, it's the Beetlejuice death metal band.
Wow, aptly put. No, I'm glad you said it because yeah, we like Finchel to be Finchel. but we definitely want our Immolation to be
Yeah.
Immolation.
If
I
you're gonna
agree.
be a brutal death metal band, be a brutal death metal band.
Facts.
Don't
Oh,
half-ass it, you know? It's because those of us who've been in the scene for a long time, like
mhm.
myself, we're gonna sit there and go, "What are you doing?
Yeah, agreed.
This isn't what I expected from, you know, you guys, so to speak."
Yeah, and Immolation, once again, these guys, they didn't disappoint. And I don't usually do interludes. For me, they're the most skippable tracks. However, Descent is
Depends.
now officially on the list of very small exceptions. And when I talk about exceptions, I'm talking about a list of albums that ranks in the single digits because it's not really much of an interlude because interludes are usually like a minute, but it's an
Mhm.
instrumental, dark, melodic track. And it's like 3.5 minutes long, whatever. And it actually sets up the stage for the final song, which is the title track, Descent, on the album very well because by the time we get to that final track, it feels that much more crushing and maybe even be the fastest song on the album. It makes it feel that much more intense when you went through 3 minutes of somber melodies and go
Mhm.
straight into the bludgeoning of the closing track. I really felt that added heaviness, and you could definitely hear more of that chaotic feel, almost as if they were like recording on live and not to a metronome, even though it's obvious they were recording to a click track. But I remember before the metronome, there was a little bit more of like an unhinged feel to a lot of death metal albums,
Mm,
and there
it's
was definitely
coordinate.
some of that unhingedness creeping in on this album. How they captured that, it must have just been a lightning in a bottle take.
Prob More than likely, I mean, one of the nice things is when you hear a band that's been around as long as Immolation,
Mhm.
that there's no compromise with the sound. And there isn't with this album. Like I said, I was listening to it on my way to and at work, and I was like, God damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've heard a really good, brutal death metal album. Because usually there's something somewhere lacking on the album somewhere, be it the production,
Mhm.
too many breakdowns over the course of the album. It's just pure unadulterated brutality and nothing else to it. Because trust me, even you know me, I'm a huge fan of Marduk, but I
Mhm.
can't listen
Mhm.
to stuff like that 24/7.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know, it kind of wears on you after a while.
It can blend a bit. I agree with that. I do agree with that. Another thing that really works to Descent's benefit is they kind of dial back the technicality that there was going on some of the last few albums.
Mm,
It's not like they became like a band who's going to play Smoke on the Water, but it's more of
right.
like they definitely had a bit more of an emphasis on memorable riffs. And I feel like that actually works to the album's benefit because once again, it's never about the most technical. It's not about the facet. It's about who writes the most memorable songs, songs that stick with you in your head. And I even dare say it's actually kind of a catchy album because of that. I know that word like kind of scares death metal fans, and I reject that
Mm,
concept because to me,
I agree.
catchy is great. It means it
Yes.
sticks in your head, and I want to be at my workplace, escaping from what's going on at work and thinking about an Immolation
Hmm.
album and the riff that's sticking in my head. This album has chock full of riffs that I can say for sure is going to do that.
For those who look at the word catchy involved, linked to death metal, and like, oh god, that means it's probably weak or commercial. No, that doesn't. No, it doesn't mean that. It's just got something in the riff
Hmm.
to make you kind of sit there and go, yeah, okay, this is good stuff. A prime example of that, in my opinion, would be certain obituary songs
Hmm.
or even
Hmm.
carcass tracks.
Hmm. Hmm.
Especially towards like the latter half of the carcass output, like necroticism and heart work. They have those riffs that are technical, but at the same time, that riff is sticking with you.
Yeah, it's catchy like a pop song, but without being a pop song. Yeah, there's
Yes.
definitely a lot of that here, and I'm glad Immolation went in that direction. I love it when they get all technical with their stuff, but for them to emphasize on heaviness on this album a lot more than the last few, I'm so here for this. And I will say, I guess you could say to really round up thoughts. For me, this is me personally speaking. I'll pass it back out to you. My final thoughts, this has album of the year potential on it, all over it. Now, I even go as far as to say, like, I'm not going to do my rankings, but do I think it has a potential to be one of my favorite Immolation albums? Maybe. The only thing that can maybe bring that down is if the repeat listens just aren't as engaging. But I've gone through this thing 2 or 3 times now, and each listen has been absolutely engaging, and I'm really excited about getting into more listens to soak this album in, because this feels like one of those albums like I'm like really jazzed and enthused about going back to. Whereas Acts of God, I was like, oh, it was a good album, and I went back to a few times, and I liked it for what it was, and I really enjoyed the 2 albums before it. But this one, I'm just feeling extra for, which is wild. So, what would you say you're rounding up your final thoughts overall?
Definitely, from what I've heard of them lately, they're one of their better albums, hands
Mhm,
down.
mhm.
It's very much so. When I think Immolation, this is going to be one of those albums that I think of.
That's a hell of an endorsement, dude. Especially you were there. You were there from way back when. I feel like that actually kind of means something more from you than admittedly coming from me, because I've only been in the game with this band for a decade and a half. So if anything, you kind of have a little bit more of a valid opinion than I do.
I don't know about all that, but I mean, yeah, they're a band I have been listening to for a
Hmm.
while.
Hmm.
Like I said, going to death metal shows in my neck of the woods, unless it was a Metal Blade show, because for the longest time, the only bands on that bill would be the bands on Metal Blade. Local acts, like there were local bands playing, chances are Immolation was playing, or Morpheus Descends, or Mortician, or, dozens of other bands that came from this part of New York I'm in. And there was a huge, like the one county that they're in, that Yonkers is in, a
Hmm.
bunch of bands came out of there. Westchester County, a
Hmm.
ton of bands came out of that area.
Well, guys, that's Imperius' thoughts. Those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts on this album? Do you love it as much as we do? I was shocked how much I love this album. I knew I was going to like it. I really did know. I just like, I'm ready for this. I have a good feeling about this, but it came out even better. And that's freaking awesome to say it's better. I have a feeling him and we're going to be having sporadic text messages, conversations about this
Mhm.
album throughout the year, because this just feels like one of those it albums. But why
Uh,
don't you put your thoughts in the comments below on the album? Thank you for watching this video, and you lay down your souls to the gods, rock and roll.
The cream of the crop!